The grandeur of the evening painted an exquisite portrait of celebration, where crystal chandeliers cast their ethereal glow across a sea of smiling faces. The air itself seemed to shimmer with joy, perfumed with the sweet fragrance of roses and lilies that adorned every corner of the magnificent reception hall. This day was meant to be the embodiment of love's triumph, a testament to the sacred bond between two souls joined in matrimonial bliss. But beneath the surface of this picture-perfect celebration, a dark undercurrent of deception flowed, threatening to shatter the very foundation of what appeared to be the ideal union. Welcome to True Crime Stories Archive, your gateway to the chilling world of real-life horror. Here, we delve into the darkest corners of humanity, unearthing terrifying stories of true crime that will leave you sleeping with the lights on. Before we begin this haunting tale, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to never miss our bone-chilling content. At the heart of this celebration stood Malik Dillard, a figure whose presence commanded respect and admiration. His success story had become legendary within their community, a testament to the power of determination and unwavering integrity. The crisp lines of his tailored tuxedo spoke of wealth earned through years of dedication, while his warm smile reflected a heart that had captured the affection of all who knew him. As he stood before his guests, his eyes sparkled with the pure joy of a man who believed he had found his perfect match. By his side stood Ayanna Willis, a vision of ethereal beauty in her flowing white gown. Her presence seemed to illuminate the room, drawing admiring glances from every direction. The delicate lace of her veil partially obscured features that had bewitched not just Malik, but another whose presence would prove fatal to this celebration of love. Each graceful movement she made seemed choreographed to perfection, every smile calculated to enhance the illusion of the blushing bride deeply in love with her groom. The wedding ceremony itself was a masterful blend of cultural richness and modern sophistication. African American traditions woven seamlessly into contemporary celebrations created a tapestry of meaningful moments that seemed to elevate the occasion beyond mere matrimony. The rhythmic sounds of gospel choir filled the sacred space, their voices rising in harmonious celebration of what appeared to be the perfect union. The exchange of vows, witnessed by hundreds of guests, rang with promises of eternal devotion, even as shadows of betrayal lurked beneath the surface of every word. As the celebration unfolded, the guest list read like a who's who of success and influence. Each attendee had been carefully selected to witness what they believed was the culmination of a perfect love story. Yet amidst the sea of well-wishers, one figure stood apart from the jubilant crowd, his internal struggle masked behind a facade of brotherly support. Nasir Dillard, Malik's younger brother, carried a burden that threatened to implode this carefully constructed moment of familial joy. The seeds of this tragedy were planted long before the wedding bells began to chime. Ayanna Willis had emerged from humble beginnings, where the harsh realities of financial instability had shaped her worldview from an early age. Her childhood home in a modest neighborhood stood as a constant reminder of everything she had sworn to leave behind. The memories of empty refrigerators and unpaid bills had carved deep grooves into her psyche, transforming her natural ambition into something more calculating, more desperate. Living in a world where every penny needed to be counted twice, young Ayanna learned early that love alone couldn't keep the electricity running or put food on the table. These formative years molded her into someone who viewed relationships not through the lens of emotion, but through the cold calculations of survival. Each relationship became a potential stepping stone, each connection evaluated for its ability to elevate her from the circumstances she so desperately wanted to escape. When Ayanna first crossed paths with Malik Dillard, she recognized an opportunity that aligned perfectly with her aspirations. His success in real estate development had made him not just wealthy, but respected, a combination that promised the security she had always craved. Throughout their courtship, she masterfully played the role of the perfect partner, her every action carefully calibrated to reinforce his growing attachment to her. The mask she wore was flawless, crafted through years of observing what successful men desired in a partner. She learned to laugh at the right moments, to show interest in his business ventures without seeming overly focused on his wealth, and to present herself as someone who shared his values and dreams for the future. Each interaction was a performance, though one so skillfully executed that even those closest to Malik never suspected the calculation behind her affectionate gestures. However, the complexity of this deception doubled when Nasir entered the picture. Unlike his older brother, Nasir possessed a raw authenticity that cut through Ayana's carefully constructed walls. He represented everything that stood in opposition to her calculated path to security: spontaneous, passionate, and delightfully unpredictable. Their connection, sparked during a chance encounter, quickly evolved into something that threatened to unravel everything Ayana had worked to achieve. The affair between Ayana and Nasir began innocently enough, perhaps as innocently as a betrayal could begin. While Malik devoted his time to building his empire, his younger brother found himself drawn into an emotional vortex with his future sister-in-law. Their clandestine meetings, initially masked as innocent family interactions, soon evolved into something far more dangerous. Each stolen moment, each secret exchange of glances, added another layer to their forbidden connection. Unlike the calculated relationship she maintained with Malik, Ayana's involvement with Nasir sparked something raw and uncontrolled within her. The younger Dillard brother represented everything that didn't fit into her carefully plotted ascent to security. His free spirit, an unrestrained approach to life awakened emotions she had long suppressed in pursuit of her goals. Yet even as she found herself falling deeper into this passionate affair, her pragmatic mind never lost sight of her ultimate objective. For Nasir, the situation proved increasingly torturous. Each time he watched his brother lovingly embrace Ayana, each moment he had to maintain the facade of the supportive brother, carved deeper wounds into his conscience. The weight of their secret pressed heavily upon him, transforming family gatherings into exercises in emotional endurance. The genuine bond he had always shared with Malik made their deception all the more devastating. The situation reached a critical point when Ayana discovered she was pregnant. This development, which should have been a moment of pure joy, instead became the centerpiece of her most intricate deception. With calculated precision, she ensured that the timing of her announcement aligned perfectly with her relationship with Malik, though she knew without doubt that the child she carried belonged to Nasir. Malik's reaction to the news had been everything she had anticipated: pure joy mixed with proud anticipation of fatherhood. His excitement manifested in countless ways: late-night runs for specific cravings, careful attention to her every comfort, and endless discussions about their future as parents. Each gesture of his devotion added another layer of guilt to both Ayana's and Nasir's burden. As the wedding day approached, the pressure of maintaining their deception intensified. The preparations for what should have been a joyous celebration became a complex dance of avoiding suspicion while managing increasingly volatile emotions. Nasir struggled with the knowledge that his brother would unknowingly raise his child, while Ayana worked tirelessly to keep both brothers in check, ensuring their secret remained buried beneath layers of lies and manipulation. The wedding day dawned with deceptive tranquility, the morning sun casting a golden glow that seemed to bless the celebration ahead. The Riverside Hotel buzzed with activity as vendors, coordinators, and family members moved in choreographed chaos to ensure every detail met perfection. Yet beneath this orchestrated harmony, 3 hearts beat with very different rhythms, one filled with pure joy, another with calculated satisfaction, and the third with mounting desperation. The ceremony proceeded exactly as planned, every moment meticulously crafted to present the image of a perfect union. Malik stood at the altar, his tall frame radiating confidence and joy, completely unaware of the devastation lurking beneath the surface of his happiness. His dark suit, custom-tailored for this moment, symbolized the success he had achieved, success he was eager to share with the woman he believed to be his soulmate. Each gesture, each loving glance Malik directed toward Ayana, struck Nasir like physical blows. Standing beside his brother as best man, he struggled to maintain his composure while the weight of their betrayal threatened to crush him. The traditional black tuxedo he wore felt more like a funeral suit, mourning the death of his integrity and the irreparable damage about to befall his family. As Ayana glided down the aisle, her ivory gown flowing behind her like a river of secrets, the assembled guests saw only what she wanted them to see: a radiant bride approaching her destiny. The intricate beadwork of her dress caught the light, creating patterns that danced across the walls like the web of lies she had woven. Her carefully applied makeup masked any hint of the turmoil churning beneath her serene exterior. The vows exchanged before friends and family echoed through the ornate space, each promise of loyalty and devotion laced with hidden meanings and unspoken truths. Malik's voice rang clear and strong, filled with genuine love and commitment, while Ayana's responses carried undertones that only Nazir could truly understand. The gold rings they exchanged became not symbols of endless love, but shackles binding them all to an inevitable tragedy. Throughout the reception, the tension continued to build beneath the veneer of celebration. Every toast raised to the happy couple, every congratulatory speech about love and family, drove the knife of guilt deeper into both Ayana and Nazir's hearts. The traditional father-daughter dance morphed into a painful reminder of the generational deception about to unfold, as somewhere within Ayana's body grew a child whose true parentage would shake the foundations of the Dillard family. As evening descended and the reception continued in full swing, the weight of unspoken words and hidden truths became increasingly unbearable. The chandelier's crystal teardrops cast dancing shadows across the ballroom floor, each movement seeming to mock the facade of happiness they struggled to maintain. The air grew thick with unspoken tension, despite the joyous music and laughter that filled the space. Nazir found himself increasingly unable to maintain his composure as the night wore on. Each time he caught glimpses of his brother's genuine happiness, the guilt gnawed deeper into his conscience. The champagne he consumed did nothing to dull the sharp edges of his remorse, instead amplifying the turbulent emotions threatening to break free. His practiced smile began to crack around the edges, drawing concerned glances from relatives who sensed something amiss but couldn't quite identify the source of his distress. Meanwhile, Ayana navigated the reception with practiced grace, accepting congratulations and well wishes with perfectly timed smiles and gracious responses. Her hand often drifted to her abdomen, a gesture that brought tears of joy to Malik's eyes while sending daggers of guilt through Nazir's heart. The baby, their secret embodied, became an invisible presence at the celebration, a ticking time bomb threatening to destroy everything. As the evening progressed and guests began to depart, leaving behind empty champagne flutes and scattered rose petals, the carefully maintained equilibrium began to shift. The thinning crowd created dangerous pockets of isolation, moments where meaningful glances could be exchanged without fear of detection. The mounting pressure of their shared secret began to overwhelm the careful boundaries they had established. Ayana, sensing the unraveling of their carefully constructed facade, made her excuses and retreated to the bridal suite. Her departure from the reception hall was measured and graceful, but her hurried steps betrayed the anxiety building within. The weight of her elaborate gown, once a symbol of triumph, now felt suffocating as she sought refuge from the scrutiny of remaining guests. The bridal suite, with its luxurious furnishings and romantic ambience, became a prison of her own making. The mirror reflected back an image of perfection, the beautiful bride on her wedding day, but beneath the surface, chaos reigned. The room's opulence, meant to celebrate love and new beginnings, instead bore witness to the beginning of an inevitable end. Nazir, unable to bear the weight of their deception any longer, found himself drawn to the bridal suite like a moth to a destructive flame. The plush carpeting of the hotel hallway muffled his footsteps as he made his way through the dimly lit corridor. Each step forward felt like moving through molasses, his conscience warring with his desperation to confront the situation that had spiraled far beyond their control. The hotel's elegant corridors, designed to cocoon guests in luxury, now seemed to close in around him. The ornate wallpaper patterns blurred in his peripheral vision as he focused solely on his destination. The distance between the reception hall and the bridal suite stretched endlessly before him, each step bringing him closer to a confrontation that would shatter the evening's carefully maintained illusion. Inside the bridal suite, Ayana paced the floor, her wedding gown rustling with each movement like whispered accusations. The room's grandeur, with its king-size bed draped in fine linens and scattered rose petals, stood in stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within its walls. The champagne bottle chilling in its silver bucket remained untouched, its celebratory purpose now seeming mockingly inappropriate. When Nazir's knock finally came, it echoed through the suite like a death knell. The sound reverberated off the walls, cutting through the artificial calm Iana had tried to maintain. Their confrontation began with measured words, but quickly escalated as months of suppressed emotions burst forth like a dam breaking under immense pressure. The pristine suite became an arena for their long-buried truths to finally surface. The discussion between them evolved into an emotional tempest, their voices rising and falling like waves in a storm. Nazir's anguish over the child he would never claim as his own collided with Iana's desperate justifications for her choices. Their words bounced off the suite's elegant walls, each accusation and defense adding another crack to their already fractured relationship. As they argued, either heard the approaching footsteps in the hallway. Malik, having finished thanking the last of their guests, had come in search of his bride, expecting to find her preparing for their first night as husband and wife. Instead, he found himself frozen outside the door, an unwilling audience to the unraveling of everything he held dear. Through the heavy wooden door, Malik heard fragments of conversation that shattered his world into irreparable pieces. Each word that filtered through pierced his heart with devastating clarity. The hushed yet intense exchange between his brother and new wife stripped away years of trust in mere moments. The revelation of their affair, the truth about the child's paternity, and the calculated nature of Iana's pursuit of him, each discovery landed like a physical blow. Standing in that opulent hallway, his hand hovering near the door handle, Malik felt the foundations of his world crumbling beneath his feet. The pristine walls of the hotel corridor seemed to spin around him as the full weight of their betrayal pressed down upon his shoulders. Everything he had believed about his life, his love, and his family was dissolving into a nightmare of deception. The elegant surroundings of the luxury hotel now felt like a cruel mockery of the happiness he had felt mere hours before. The soft lighting that had earlier cast a romantic glow now seemed harsh and exposing, illuminating the bitter truth he had been blind to for so long. His wedding ring, still new and gleaming on his finger, transformed from a symbol of eternal love into a badge of his own naivety. When Malik finally pushed open the door, the scene before him froze in terrible clarity. Nazir and Iana stood facing each other, their postures tense with confrontation, both turning toward him with expressions of horror, as they realized their secret was no longer their own. The bridal suite, decorated for romance and new beginnings, became the stage for an unfolding tragedy. The moments that followed unspooled like a nightmare in slow motion. The emotional dam that had been holding back Malik's rage and grief burst forth with catastrophic force. Years of brotherly love and trust twisted into something dark and unrecognizable as he lunged toward Nazir, his movements driven by blind fury and heartbreak. In the ensuing chaos, the elegant furnishings of the bridal suite became obstacles in a deadly dance. The champagne bucket toppled, ice scattering across the plush carpet like diamonds on a battlefield. Decorative vases crashed to the floor, their shattered pieces mixing with rose petals in a grotesque parody of the day's earlier celebration. The confrontation escalated with frightening speed. Iana's desperate attempts to intervene were drowned out by the sounds of struggle. The two brothers, once inseparable, now locked in a violent embrace that would end in tragedy. The beautiful bridal suite, meant for love and new beginnings, transformed into the scene of devastating finale. In one terrible moment, a push, a stumble, and fate sealed their destinies forever. Nazir's body struck the ornate marble coffee table with sickening force. The sound of impact echoed through the room like a thunderclap, followed by an eerie silence that seemed to stretch into eternity. The younger Dillard brother lay motionless on the floor, his life slipping away as red began to seep into the pristine white carpet. The reality of what had occurred descended upon the room like a suffocating shroud. Iana's scream pierced the silence, a sound of pure anguish that would haunt the halls of the Riverside Hotel long after that fateful night. She rushed to Nazir's side, her wedding gown billowing around her like a ghost shroud, its pristine white fabric soaking up the evidence of their collective tragedy. Malik stood frozen, his hands trembling as he stared at the scene before him. The successful businessman, known for his composure and control, now faced the ultimate loss of both. His brother still form, the woman he had loved now cradling his sibling's lifeless body, the child that would never know its true father, all of it crashed down upon him with the weight of mountains. The grand wedding, celebrated just hours before with such joy and promise, had transformed into a Greek tragedy. The same halls that had echoed with laughter and celebration now witnessed the aftermath of betrayal's bitter harvest. The elaborate flower arrangements, still fresh and fragrant, stood as silent witnesses to the destruction of a family. Time seemed to stop in that moment, suspended in the horror of realization. The 3 lives that had become so intricately entangled now lay in ruins, their futures forever altered by the consequences of their choices. The perfect facade they had maintained for so long had finally shattered, leaving nothing but devastation in its wake. The aftermath of that fatal moment unfolded like a slow-motion nightmare. The opulent bridal suite, once a symbol of new beginnings, had become a tomb of shattered dreams and irreversible consequences. The chandelier's light caught in the shards of broken glass scattered across the floor, each piece reflecting the fractured remains of their relationships. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Iona's heart-wrenching sobs as she clung to Nazir's lifeless form. Her elaborate wedding gown, now stained with the evidence of tragedy, spread around them like a twisted canvas painting the scene of their destruction. The child she carried, the catalyst for this catastrophe, remained an innocent witness to its father's death. Malik stood immobile, his world collapsing inward as the magnitude of his actions crashed over him in relentless waves. The successful man who had built an empire on calculated decisions and careful planning had lost everything in one moment of uncontrolled rage. His hands, which hours earlier had tenderly held his bride's, now trembled with the knowledge of what they had done. The luxurious room, with its scattered rose petals and overturned furniture, told the story of how quickly joy could turn to tragedy. The champagne bottle, still unopened, lay on its side, its contents seeping into the carpet alongside darker stains, a grim metaphor for celebrations transformed into mourning. The perfect wedding day, meticulously planned and executed, had ended in an explosion of violence that would echo through their lives forever. What began as a celebration of love had concluded with the destruction of a family, leaving behind questions that would never find satisfactory answers. The tragic events of that wedding night left an indelible mark on all who were touched by it. What started as a day filled with promises of happily ever after transformed into a cautionary tale of how deception, no matter how carefully woven, eventually unravels with devastating consequences. In the days that followed, the Grand Riverside Hotel became a place of whispered rumors and shocked speculation. The ballroom where guests had danced in celebration stood empty, its splendor dimmed by the shadow of tragedy. The bridal suite remained sealed, its contents preserved as evidence of how quickly love could turn fatal. Iona's calculated rise from humble beginnings to secure prosperity ended not in triumph, but in devastating loss. Her carefully constructed plan to escape poverty had instead trapped her in a prison of consequences far worse than the financial hardships she had so desperately sought to avoid. The child she carried, meant to be her anchor to a life of security, would now be born into a legacy of tragedy. The Dillard family, once respected and admired throughout the community, found their name forever tainted by scandal and heartbreak. Malik's success, built through years of dedication and integrity, crumbled in the wake of a single moment of uncontrolled rage. His future, once bright with promise, now faced the dark reality of his actions. The truth about the affair, the pregnancy, and the fatal confrontation spread through their social circles like wildfire, destroying reputations and relationships in its wake. The wedding guests who had celebrated with such joy now found themselves unwilling participants in a tragedy that would be whispered about for years to come. In the cold light of aftermath, the magnitude of destruction caused by their collective choices became painfully clear. The elaborate wedding, which had cost a fortune to create the illusion of perfect love, now stood as a monument to the devastating power of secrets and lies. Every detail that had been meticulously planned to showcase their union now served as a bitter reminder of its destruction. The weight of consequence fell heavily on each survivor. For Malik, the successful businessman known for his measured approach to life, the reality of having taken his own brother's life created an abyss of guilt from which he might never emerge. His empire of achievements, built on trust and integrity, now stood as hollow monuments to what he had lost. Iana's carefully laid plans for financial security through marriage had backfired spectacularly. The child she carried, intended to cement her position in a life of comfort, would now be born into a web of tragedy and loss. Her manipulation of both brothers, initially calculated to secure her future, had instead ensured its destruction. The grand reception hall where hundreds had gathered to celebrate love became a ghostly reminder of how quickly joy could turn to tragedy. The elaborate floral arrangements withered, their decay a fitting metaphor for the death of innocence that occurred within those walls. The champagne glasses, half empty and abandoned, stood as silent witnesses to the moment when celebration turned to catastrophe. In the end, this wedding day became a cautionary tale of how the pursuit of security at any cost can lead to unimaginable consequences. The price of deception proved far higher than anyone could have anticipated, claiming not just lives and relationships, but the very foundation of trust that families are built upon. The reverberations of that fatal night extended far beyond the immediate tragedy. The luxurious Riverside Hotel, once a sought-after venue for celebrations of love, became marked by the shadow of what transpired in its bridal suite. The room itself remained unchanged, yet carried an invisible weight of the events that transformed a wedding day into a scene of devastating loss. For those who witnessed the aftermath, the contrast between the day's beginning and its end remained stark and haunting. The morning had dawned with all the promise of new beginnings, fresh flowers, elegant decorations, and the excited buzz of anticipation. By nightfall, these same elements stood as mocking reminders of how quickly joy could turn to despair. The traditional elements of African American culture that had enriched the ceremony now carried a bittersweet resonance. The customs meant to unite families and celebrate heritage instead bore witness to the destruction of brotherly bonds and familial trust. The songs of celebration had turned to dirges of mourning. Amidst the wreckage of that night, 3 lives laid in ruins, one ended too soon, 2 others forever altered by the weight of their choices and their consequences. The truth about the pregnancy, which should have been a source of joy, became instead the catalyst for destruction. The deception that Iana had woven so carefully, thinking it would secure her future, had instead ensured its devastation. The community that had gathered to celebrate love found itself grappling with the shock of tragedy. The story of the Dillard brothers and the woman who came between them became a whispered cautionary tale, a reminder of how the pursuit of security and the power of secrets could unravel even the strongest of bonds. The aftermath presented a stark tableau of consequences. The bridal suite, still adorned with scattered rose petals and shattered glass, told the story of how quickly celebration could turn to tragedy. The champagne that was meant for toasting new beginnings slowly seeped into the plush carpet, mixing with darker stains that would forever mark this night of devastation. For Malik Dillard, the successful businessman whose reputation was built on integrity and trust, the reality of having taken his own brother's life created an abyss of guilt that threatened to consume him. His carefully constructed world of achievement and respect crumbled in the wake of one moment of uncontrolled rage. The brother he had loved and trusted now lay lifeless because of his own hands. Iana's calculated rise from poverty to prosperity had ended not in triumph, but in devastating loss. Her manipulation of both brothers, orchestrated to secure the financial stability she craved, had instead sealed her fate in ways she never anticipated. The child she carried, meant to be her anchor to a life of security, would now bear the weight of its origins, a reminder of destruction rather than love. The wedding gifts remained unopened, their cheerful wrapping paper a mockery of the joy they were meant to represent. The guest book, filled with warm wishes and celebrations of love, now read like hollow prophecies of happiness that would never come to pass. Each signature represented a witness to what began as a celebration and ended as a tragedy. The perfect facade of the wedding day, which had cost so much in both monetary and emotional currency, lay in ruins. The elaborate decorations, the carefully chosen music, the meticulously planned ceremony, all of it now stood as evidence of how thoroughly deception could destroy lives when finally exposed. The grand ballroom, where hours earlier guests had danced and celebrated, now stood in eerie silence. The elegant place settings remained largely untouched, wine glasses still holding the remnants of toasts made to a future that would never come to pass. The dance floor, where Malik and Ayanna had shared their first dance, now seemed to echo with the hollow promises of their vows. In the wake of tragedy, the true cost of Ayanna's ambition became painfully clear. Her journey from a modest neighborhood, driven by memories of empty refrigerators and unpaid bills, had led her to orchestrate a deception that claimed not just one life, but destroyed many. Her careful manipulation of both brothers, which seemed so calculated and controlled, had spiraled into chaos she could never have predicted. The relationship between Nasir and Ayanna, which began as a dangerous distraction, had evolved into something that shattered the foundations of family loyalty. Their secret meetings and stolen moments, once thrilling in their forbidden nature, now stood as stepping stones to devastation. The passion they thought they could contain had proven too powerful, too destructive to remain hidden. The Dillard family name, once associated with success and respect in the community, would forever be tainted by the events of this wedding night. Malik's reputation as a man of integrity now lay in ruins alongside his brother's lifeless body. The empire he had built through years of hard work and determination would be overshadowed by this single act of violence. The evidence of celebration turned tragedy remained frozen in time within that hotel suite. Scattered rose petals, now wilted and crushed, created a macabre path leading to where Nasir had fallen. The wedding cake, still waiting to be cut in another room, would remain untouched, a pristine monument to promises that died before they could be fulfilled. What began as Ayanna's carefully calculated plan for escape from poverty had evolved into an intricate web of deception that trapped everyone in its threads. Her pursuit of financial security, born from years of watching her family struggle, had driven her to manipulate the affections of two brothers. The skills she had developed in presenting herself as the perfect partner became the very tools that would orchestrate this tragedy. The contrast between the brothers stood in stark relief against the backdrop of devastation. Malik, the epitome of success and stability, whose love had been genuine but blind. And Nasir, whose passionate nature had drawn him into a forbidden romance that would cost him his life. The bond of brotherhood, once unshakable, had shattered in a moment of uncontrollable rage. The revelation of Ayanna's pregnancy, which should have been a moment of joy, instead became the catalyst for destruction. The child, innocent yet unknowingly central to this tragedy, would enter the world carrying the weight of its origins. The truth about its parentage, meant to remain buried beneath layers of deception, had erupted with fatal consequences. The wedding venue, transformed from a place of celebration to a scene of tragedy, bore silent witness to how quickly joy could turn to devastation. The carefully chosen decorations, the elegant table settings, the thoughtfully selected music all now seemed like props in a tragic play, their purpose perverted by the night's events. In the aftermath, the once pristine bridal suite became a tomb of shattered illusions. The space where Ayanna had prepared for her wedding hours earlier now held the evidence of ultimate betrayal. Her reflection in the suite's ornate mirrors had shifted from that of a radiant bride to a woman whose ambitions had led to catastrophic consequences. The investigation that followed would lay bare every careful deception, every manipulated moment. The truth about her relationship with Nasir, their secret meetings, and the child's true parentage would become public knowledge. The very security she had sacrificed everything to achieve had slipped through her fingers like the shattered glass that littered the hotel suite floor. Malik's transformation from respected businessman to a man broken by betrayal and his own actions painted a stark picture of how quickly a life built on success could crumble. His reputation for integrity and sound judgment lay in ruins alongside the body of his younger brother. The empire he had built, which had attracted Ayanna to him in the first place, now seemed hollow in the face of what he had lost. The wedding guests who had departed earlier, still glowing from the celebration, remained unaware of the tragedy unfolding behind them. Their joyful messages in the guest book, their heartfelt toasts to the couple's future, stood as bitter reminders of how thoroughly appearances could deceive. The African-American traditions and cultural elements that had added such depth and meaning to the ceremony now cast long shadows over the tragedy. The unity candle still burned in the chapel, its flame witnessing the destruction of the very family bonds it was meant to celebrate. The ceremonial jumping of the broom, symbolizing the crossing into a new life together, had instead become a leap into catastrophe. The hotel staff, who had worked tirelessly to create the perfect wedding environment, found themselves unwitting witnesses to its violent unraveling. The sounds of celebration that had filled the corridors mere hours before gave way to the echoes of sirens and the hushed whispers of emergency responders. In those final moments in the bridal suite, 3 lives collided with devastating force. Nazir, whose passion and spontaneity had drawn him into a fatal attraction. Ayana, whose ambition and calculation had orchestrated their downfall. And Malik, whose trust and love had transformed into destructive rage upon discovering their betrayal. The impact of that night would ripple through their community for years to come. The Dillard name, once synonymous with success and respect, would forever be associated with this tragic tale of love, betrayal, and death. The story would be whispered at other weddings, a cautionary tale of how the pursuit of security at any cost could lead to devastating consequences. This wedding day, meant to be a celebration of love and new beginnings, instead became a testament to the destructive power of deception. The perfect facade created by Ayana's careful manipulation had crumbled, revealing the tragic consequences of building a future on a foundation of lies. If you'd like to explore similar stories of love, betrayal, and their tragic consequences, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Stories Archive. Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings can hide the darkest of endings.